She told me real love didn't need old wood and rusty machines. I said real love doesn't demand a fire sale of your dead father's life's work. By the time I realized she meant it, I'd already caught her shoes under my tenant's bed. I'm 33, live in Milwaukee, and I'm the kind of person who keeps a set of shims in the glove box. The workshop that anchors this story sits behind a narrow 2-story brick house at 642 East Chambers Street, River West. Zip 53212. It was my dad's Harold Harper, carved out of a drafty carriage house in 1997 with a loan I still have the copy of, notarized January 8th of that year at a downtown BMO branch. He fixed jukeboxes and pinball machines for bars along North Avenue. I grew up holding flashlights and sanding playfields, and when he died 3 summers ago, I moved his orange coffee mug to a safer shelf and learned how grief tastes when it's mixed with sawdust. By day, I'm a structural engineer for a mid-size firm off Water Street. I spend my weeks proofreading calculations and arguing about rebar spacing. My hobby, the thing that makes me feel like I'm still connected to something honest, is restoring vintage pinball machines. I don't flip them for profit. I write the serial numbers in a grid notebook and keep the receipts in plastic sleeves. $240 for a Bally chime unit from an eBay seller in Akron on March 12th. $48 for a bag of 47 bulbs from a guy named Biscuit Hound who ships like a saint. There's nothing glamorous about it. The workshop smells like shellac and oiled metal. The radio barely works unless you slap it. It is mine. Her name doesn't belong in the title and maybe doesn't deserve the dignity here. But people are real, even when they disappoint you. Lena was 31 when we got engaged last fall, a marketing coordinator who made sock ads look like poetry. We met at the Milwaukee Film Festival, standing in the same line for a documentary neither of us liked. She laughed easy, leaned into conversation the way a good chair leans just enough to catch you. She loved my hands. "You have honest palms," she said once, and I loved that she kept strange facts in her pockets. She could tell you the life cycle of a cicada and remember your coffee order 3 weeks later. At first, she flipped my cranky introversion into warm light. She reorganized my kitchen and it made sense. She convinced me to buy a softer couch. She printed a photo of my dad and me, covered in sawdust, and stuck it in a yellow thrift store frame. She brought her books, mostly novels with cracked spines, and fit them perfectly into the built-in shelves like they'd been waiting. It felt like fitting a new backbox on a cabinet, the bolts sliding through with satisfying threads. But a few months in, the red flags were small and neat, like thread pulled from a sleeve that doesn't look dangerous until the sweater gathers in your lap. When I went to the workshop, she said, "You vanish there." Not angry, exactly, but suspicious of any silence that didn't include her voice. When I explained a repair, the patience it takes to clean a stepper unit, the mindfulness of a rubber ring change, she smiled with only her mouth. "Cute," she said once, tapping her phone. "But how does it scale?" Money is where the snags tightened. I make a steady salary. She made less, but had a way of acting like her taste was a map. She didn't push expensive things. It was subtler. She'd lay a magazine open to a matte black kitchen with aproned sinks and whisper, "One day." She floated timelines. "By next summer we should have a plan," she said in January, "and by March let's clear the junk." The junk meant my father's presses and lathes and drill press, the battered stool with the burn scar, the cardboard lids labeled Williams pop bumpers, 1966-1972. The tacit lines of a life that taught me hands can be sermons. In late February, she brought spreadsheets to dinner. She claimed she was helping. She'd made tabs monthly expenses, renovation projections, house value color-coded like a child's science fair. The number that made my hands go numb was on the 3rd tab, Revenue Opportunity Accessory Dwelling Unit Conversion. She had a contractor's estimate from a company in Waukesha called Mountaintop Modern. Demo the workshop, pour a new slab, frame a 600-square-foot ADU with a skylight and a Murphy bed. The total, $128,400. "We could Airbnb it while we save for the wedding," she said, stabbing the PDF on her iPad. "It pays for itself in 4 to 5 years." "Dad bolted that drill press to the concrete in 03, I said. Lena reached and squeezed my wrist. "Sweetheart, the past is not an heirloom." "The past is literally the definition of an heirloom. She laughed, but the kind that means I've missed a joke that wasn't a joke. I'm not trying to erase your father. I'm trying to build a life where we aren't stumbling over rusty play toys. You keep calling them toys, I said. They're machines. All machines are toys if they don't make money, she said. She actually smiled like she'd landed a good line. And anyway, you don't even rent the loft. You could have turned this place into income years ago. I did rent the upstairs quietly, simply to a music teacher named Eric who paid $900 cash on the first Friday of every month. He taught piano in a small studio off Brady Street and used my place as a sleep in the city simplifier. It worked because he was gone most weekends. He watered my trailing pothos without me asking. He left his bike locked to the backyard fence. He wore headphones and moved like a man afraid to wake a baby. Lena never liked that arrangement. She called it quaint, the way you call a bruise interesting. In January, she'd asked me to raise the rent to $1,300 so it aligns with neighborhood comps. I told her I'd do $1,000 in June when his informal term rolled, and she rolled her eyes like I'd thrown away free gold. In March, there were more emails. She sent me listings of inspirational garages. She sent a zoning guide from the city and highlighted an obscure clause that could help apply for an ADU permit. She CC'd me on a message to a realtor named Drew, who used disrupt as a verb twice in one sentence. She created a new note in our shared folder called March 21st Site Visit, Mountaintop Modern. I put the date in my calendar but didn't accept. Then came the day the subject turned from proposals to demands. It was Saturday, April 6th, 11:22 in the morning. The light came in low and crisp from the east, the workshop open because I was smoothing a playfield for a 1974 Bally Wizard, with an orbital sander, speed setting 3. A woman from across the alley was jogging and waved. Dad's coffee mug sat by the radio with a chip in the rim and dark rings like tree age. Lena walked in with that too bright energy she used when she wanted to steer me. She set a folded piece of paper on the bench top. Sign, she said, like we were at a deli and she needed me to take the ticket. It was a listing agreement. She'd pre-filled the address. The asking price for the house plus the workshop was $329,000. The realtor was Drew, last name Berrigan, license number printed like absolution. We're just testing interest, she said, and we don't have to sell. You could keep the house if a developer wants the lot. You told a realtor we're selling before I said yes. I told him we might, she said. He's hungry and thinks he has a buyer. Investors love converting these old carriage houses. He said, I don't care what he said. I put the sander down. Grit dust glittered in the beam of sunlight like insulted snow. Lena, you're not the owner. This is my deed. You can't strong-arm me just because you know where the good fonts live. Her jaw went flat. I am trying to make our lives less small. Our lives are okay. Small isn't a disease. Small is a trap, she said, then softened, and the soften was always more dangerous. Okay, I did it too fast. I just want us to have options. Can we at least list the workshop separately? This building isn't licensed as separate property, I said. It's on one parcel. Then subdivide. You can't subdivide air. My voice broke there. In my head, I was yelling at someone trying to sell me my own hands. She didn't speak for a beat. The radio hissed. A sparrow landed on the fence. She reached and touched the corner of the listing agreement like it might leap. Do you love me enough to choose me over a room? She asked. I love you enough to tell you this room is where I remember how to love things. She stared. She folded the paper back into a rectangle, smooth as a magician. We'll talk later, she said. Mountaintop Modern is still coming the 21st. Drew wants to meet then, too. Don't be petty. There's a way people say petty that means they've defined boundaries as selfishness and want you to applaud them while they move the fence. The breaking point arrived not with the contractor, but with a party. River West has a sloppy, golden tradition of backyard hangs when winter finally releases its teeth. On May 18th, my block did a potluck. Grill smoke braided into the maple trees, kids chalked dinosaurs in the alley. I posted a folding table with a pan of my sister's baked beans and a bowl of chips. Lena wore a linen dress she bought second-hand, the color of a peeled pistachio, and she looked like she'd pinned spring to her shoulders. People liked her. She was easy with strangers. A little after 7, after 2 beers and a paper plate of bratwurst, I went inside to grab ice. When I came back out, Lena wasn't by the table. I scanned the yard, then glanced toward the back porch of the house, then toward the workshop, the doors partly closed like a person pretending to nap. I set the bag of ice down and went to nudge the doors open further. Inside, the radio hummed. The air had the off-sour scent of warmed shellac and perfume I didn't recognize. Shoes sat by the drill press. A pair of brown leather wingtip boots and Lena's pistachio dress was bunched on the stool, the linen a soft heap like a sleeping animal. For a second, my brain refused to color the picture. Then the picture colored itself, a length of pale thigh. Eric's laugh, the quiet one that usually stayed behind his teeth, flicked out like a match. I didn't make a sound. I stepped back and let the doors rest. I looked at the yard, where a neighbor was telling a story with his hands. I found the cooler, dumped the ice in, and put the scoop back like the most polite man in Wisconsin. I stood there for 20 minutes, maybe 30, while she decided what to do with the nicest place I owned to breathe. They emerged separately. Eric came out first in a navy t-shirt, hair damp, eyes blinking like he'd misjudged dark and light. He looked at me, then at the ground. "Alex," he said, but not like a name is a bridge, more like it's a shovel and he'd hit rock. Lena stepped out after in her dress, the zipper crooked. She smoothed her hair. She saw me, her mouth turned into something I didn't recognize. The party doesn't remember the moment. That's how parties are. The people near us heard my voice and turned their heads. "Eric," I said, "I need you to pack your things." "Now." "Alex, listen," Lena said, fast, like a software update warning. "This is my fault. He's lonely. We made a mistake. It's not." "It is exactly what it is," I said. "Eric, go upstairs and pack. You have an hour. Lena, please help clean up the beans." That last line lives in my brain like a splinter of humor. Who tells the woman who just committed the stupidest version of herself to clean up baked beans? A person who grew up in a house where you keep moving when your chest is in a vice. She didn't clean the beans. She followed me across the yard, said my name too loud twice, and when I didn't stop, she put her hand on my sleeve like a police stop. "I don't want you to make a scene," she said. "Let's just go inside and—" "We already had enough scene," I said. "You made sure of that." I wasn't yelling. I was using the voice you use when you talk to old machinery, steady, because the machine hears your impatience and shows you its sharp edges. Neighbors looked, then looked away. A woman with purple hair refilled the ice bowl and avoided my eyes. Someone in a brewer's cap asked what the score was like. It mattered. Eric moved fast. I'll give him that. He clattered down the back stairs with 2 duffel bags and a too big cardboard box marked Sheet Music Misc. He didn't look at Lena. He looked at me like I was a judge who might offer parole for good behavior. "The rent for the rest of May," he said, holding out an envelope. "Leave it on the table," I said, "and leave your key." He set them down. He started to speak and then swallowed it. He walked out to the alley to his beat-up Subaru and didn't look back. He almost ran over his own bike. When the yard thinned, I took the envelope all cash, exactly 1,000 and the key. I locked the workshop. I deadbolted the house. I put the envelope in a Ziploc with a sticky note. May 18th, 8:11 p.m. Rent surrendered by Eric M. That night I slept on the sofa because the bed felt like a place where language lied. Lena slept in the guest room, or maybe she didn't sleep. Around 1:30 she knocked and whispered that she was sorry. Around 2:10 she texted the same paragraph she'd just said aloud with extra adjectives. Around 3 she sent a photo of us at the film festival, the frame in unbearable yellow. I didn't answer. I didn't throw my phone. I wrote down every time, every word, every object. In the morning she tried to brew coffee. The machine sputtered. She wore a sweatshirt I bought her in Door County that suddenly looked like evidence. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to shout so she could meet my volume. I said, "I'm not talking until I've made phone calls." The methodical aftermath is not glamorous, but it is where your spine returns to you. At 8:05, I called my bank and asked to remove her from the secondary card I'd given her in January with a $500 monthly cap. The rep was gentle. By 8:23, the cap was set to 0. At 8:47, I changed the password on our shared cloud drive and downloaded everything first. At 9:12, I called a locksmith, Rivertown Lock Key, 3723 North Holton, who answered like God. "We can do 11 a.m., he said. I moved the appointment to noon because I wanted to photograph the current locks and video the locksmith's work. Chain of custody isn't just for television. I texted my sister, Erin, who lives in Madison and used to be an intake paralegal. She called back immediately, no explanation. No, are you sure? And told me to begin a separation file. Name the folder May 18 River West, she said, and I did. Into it I dragged the Ziplocs photo, the cash envelope, the shot of Lena's linen dress on the stool, which I never wanted to look at again, but knew future me would need to outvote future her. At 11:03, Lena tried a new tactic. She went to the workshop door and rattled it, like persona might become key. "Talk to me," she said. "Let me in." "I'm busy," I said. "What are you doing?" "Counting inventory." "Since when does counting heal anything?" "Since forever." At noon, the locksmith arrived in a white van that squeaked when it stopped. He wore a shirt with his name stitched, Sam. He replaced 2 deadbolts and 1 knob. He also installed a keyed latch on the workshop's interior door that had only used a slide bolt before. I signed his invoice, number 7746, for $286.37, including tax. I scanned it into the May 18 River West folder with the subject Lock Change Post Incident. At 1:30, I sent Eric a certified letter to the address he'd given me when he first rented, 2543 North Prospect. The letter was boring in the right ways. It recorded the termination of his month-to-month, noted the rent prorated through May 31st, acknowledged receipt of $1,000 cash on May 18th, and offered a pickup time for the bike he'd left. It included 2 photos of the room and the closet to document condition. I copied a lawyer friend of my sister's, Paulo Santos, state bar number written in neat block script, who told me later it read like a small claims lullaby. Lena loved big gestures. I stuck with small binding ones. I cancelled the mountaintop modern site visit with a single email, seeing Drew from Disruptia. Change in priorities. Please confirm cancellation. Drew replied at 2:11 with a thumbs-up emoji and LMK when you're ready. I filed that too. I drove to Target and bought 2 plastic storage bins for Lena's things and a roll of blue painter's tape to label them. I emptied a drawer at a time, her socks, her Door County sweatshirt, the yellow picture frame she'd put on my shelf, which I wrapped in a kitchen towel because I am not a monster. At 4:18, she sent an email with the subject, "Please read," 8 paragraphs that rotated between "it meant nothing" and "it was a cry for help" and "you never choose me." She added a scary little kicker. "You know this is my address too now," she wrote. "You can't just kick me out like a bad tenant." She was right in an imprecise way. Wisconsin law doesn't allow you to toss a live-in partner like a comic book villain. But it also doesn't allow trespass. And we never signed a domestic partnership. She was not on the deed, not on any lease. She had mail here, a toothbrush, a drawer. A lot of couples run their homes like arrangeable furniture. Our laws run like math. I printed the email, highlighted my address, and paper-clipped it to a copy of the deed. I called Paulo. He said, "Offer a soft exit with a firm line." The line became this: "You are welcome to stay at my house through May 25th while we transition. We will set times for you to pack with me present. I will not discuss reconciliation for 30 days. If you enter the workshop without me, I will call the police." I said it as calmly as I could in the kitchen at 6:05 that night, while the city breathed like nothing happened. She scoffed and said, "You'll call the police on your fiancé?" I said, "I'll call the police on anyone who tries to set fire to the past." She looked at me like I'd turned into a different species. Maybe I had. Some animals grow armor overnight. The escalation wasn't a boom. It was a scatter of tacks underfoot. She started showing up at my office lobby at 8 a.m. with coffee, waving to the receptionist like a niece. She texted assessments of my silence in batches of 7. She left me voicemails that explained how men forgive when they're brave. When I didn't answer, she walked the line that runs between apology and menace. She posted a photo of the workshop on Instagram with a caption about "clutter equals fear." She tagged the location. I screenshot it, time-stamped 9:41 a.m. May 20th, and emailed the screenshot to myself. I turned on motion alerts for the workshop's scabbed-over Nest camera, which I'd only ever used to check whether I'd left the lights on. On May 22nd, I woke to 3 missed calls. At 5:32 a.m., the Nest sent me a video. Lena in a hoodie, jamming a paint stir stick between the doors like a thief in training. I called the non-emergency line. The officer who came was young and polite, badge-reading Carter. He took my statement. He told me to fill out a harassment injunction if it didn't quiet. "You're doing the right thing with the documentation," he said, and I felt absurdly proud, like a 4th grader who organized his crayons. I did what he said. On May 23rd, I filed for a temporary restraining order. An actual one felt too nuclear, so I started with a harassment injunction case, 2024 CV 004621, Milwaukee County Circuit Court. I attached an exhibit list. Exhibit A, Instagram screenshot. Exhibit B, Nest footage stills. Exhibit C, the please read email with my address underlined. Exhibit D, locksmith invoice 7746. Exhibit E, text snippet where she used my bedroom like a metaphor for her loneliness. That afternoon, Paolo met me at the courthouse. He wore a suit too dark for May. We waited in a beige corridor that smelled like toner. The commissioner read my papers with the weary care of someone who has seen all versions of people on fire. She granted a temporary order for 2 weeks pending a hearing. Lena could come with an officer to pick up belongings with notice. Lena could not enter the workshop or the house without me present. It felt like putting a lid on a pot that had boiled over, but still a lid. Lena didn't calm. She pivoted. She wrote my mother a letter. She copied my boss on a work-polite note about men who hide in hobby spaces. She left a bag of French roast on the porch like the ghost of mornings. She started telling mutual friends that Eric had manipulated her. To his credit, Eric texted a single-paragraph apology, the kind that doesn't run through the washing machine of excuses. He said he'd found a sublet over on Locust, included his forwarding address, and promised not to come near the house. I printed that and filed it too. Then the unexpected ally arrived, the kind of person you don't know you need until you hear their job title out loud. Her name was Nora Delaney, 34, conservator of mechanical artifacts at the Groman Museum at MSOE. I met her because I'd joined a small Machines as Memory meetup at a coffee shop on Farwell the week before everything exploded and never expected to go back. I went back anyway, partly because sitting in my own living room made my eyelids feel like they weighed too much. Nora spoke with contentment in her vowels. She knew the physics of tiny parts and the gentleness required to coax old mechanisms back into honest movement. She brought a disassembled clockwork toy from 1908 wrapped in muslin. When she unwrapped it, the table's chatter fell to a hum. "We repair," she said, "so the object can keep telling the truth of its time." After the meetup, she asked if I wanted to see the museum's storage room to look at the pinball a donor had just offered. The room smelled like clean dust. It held a Williams machine whose backglass art was laughing women and a man in a fedora that made me roll my eyes in a fond way. "We can't accept it if it won't run," she said. "We don't want a dead thing." I laughed. "I could get that to hum in 3 nights. "Will you?" she asked, not flirty, just the question mechanics ask each other when they find the person who hears them. I did. I spent 3 evenings labeling wires and cleaning contacts and listening to the machine explain itself when I paid attention. I documented everything I did for the museum's files. Contact cleaned with 99% isopropyl at 7:12 p.m. Coil sleeve replaced with a 1970s sleeve matching manufacturer's spec. Chime unit adjusted to avoid double strike. The 4th night, Nora brought burgers and sat on a crate while I aligned a pop bumper. "You're calm," she said, "like you're knitting." "I'm counting my anger until it becomes math," I said. "Does it?" she asked. "Most days." She didn't dig further. She set the burger down and used a Q-tip to clean a metal guide. She hummed, low and easy. Being near her felt like standing near a well-made machine that doesn't rush to impress you. On May 28th, the hearing for the injunction took 20 minutes that felt like 100. Lena arrived in a black blazer and cried at the right times. She said she felt abandoned in my museum of grief. She said she made a mistake and I'd turned it into a courtroom purge. Paolo kept me from speaking until the commissioner asked me direct questions. I answered with dates and receipts. On May 18th, she was inside the workshop with my tenant, I said. I found her shoes under the drill press stool. I didn't tremble. I didn't add adjectives. We submitted Exhibit F, a photo I had of the shoes because I'd taken a wide angle of the room as evidence. The commissioner narrowed her eyes at the picture, then at Lena. She extended the injunction to 30 days with a check-in. When Lena came to collect her things, an officer stood by the porch steps and watched her carry boxes labeled books, kitchen, charging cords. She paused by the workshop and turned her head toward the double doors like iron filings tilt toward a magnet. "This place is a wedge," she said. "You love it more than people." "I love people who don't ask me to burn what made me," I said. She stared. She moved a box a little, then set it down and took a last look at the yard, the fence, the maple that had seen too many apologies. "You'll be lonely," she said, "the kind of curse people fling when they know they've lost more than the game." I was for a while. You walk around your house and your brain pulls threads you didn't know existed. I cleaned surfaces with a fury I don't recommend. I polished my father's mug. I took down the yellow frame, wrapped it in newspaper, and put it at the bottom of a bin. I wrote a small note for myself and taped it inside the workshop cabinet. You are not a museum because you remember. You are a person because you choose. Nora didn't press. She texted pictures of mechanism diagrams and ugly lamps. She asked how the Williams machine sounded when the chimes were tuned. On June 7th, I came to the museum after hours with a box of parts and a small speaker I'd hacked to play the 1974 Bally jingle. We listened, two people in a very quiet room, to a machine that bounces light like it knows how much darkness exists right outside the glass. In mid-June, something like peace arrived in the mail. A notarized letter from Drew the realtor stating that per my written cancellation of March 21st, he'd closed the file. He attached a printout of a text Lena sent him at 1:02 a.m., the night of the party, trying to reschedule a walk-through for next week, please. He'd written across the printout in pen, "No further action taken." It felt like finding a loose screw under a machine and realizing you'd fixed the thing it used to belong to. Eric sent a final envelope with 2 keys and a handwritten note that said, "I am deeply sorry for trespassing on your life. I will not darken your door." I sent him a text accepting his apology and confirming my no-contact request. He replied, "Understood." That was the sound of something closing correctly. The last twist doesn't involve drama so much as alignment. On June 22nd, the Midwest Pinball Expo ran a small charity tournament at Turner Hall. The organizer had heard about my father's machines and asked if I'd bring the Bally Wizard. I'd rescued. I almost said no. I said yes because saying yes is how you find out if you're still a person. I loaded the machine into a rented U-Haul, strapped it with 2 green ratchet straps, taped a copy of the restoration log to the side so people could read what they were playing. The hall smelled like wood and electricity, my 2 most familiar prayers. Nora came. She wore a blue cotton dress and laughed when kids missed easy shots and cheered when elderly men nailed combo flips. When people asked about the machine, I didn't say much. I let the chimes clean, warm, a little bossy say what they needed. Around 9, a woman in a brewer's hoodie approached and said, "My father used to fix these." She touched the glass lightly. "It sounds right," she said, and I almost cried at the weird authority of that sentence. Lena didn't show. She'd moved to a new apartment off Kinnikinnick, according to a friend who still believed in telling me things I hadn't asked to know. She sent one last email, the kind designed to be read at midnight. "I hope you find someone who loves your machines the way you do." I read it at noon. I replied at 12:04 with one line. "I hope you find someone who loves you enough to tell you no." Then I created a new folder called June 23rd Closure, printed that too, and put it behind the other receipts because order is not control, but it is a good story you tell your nerves when they twitch. 2 weeks later, the injunction expired because neither of us asked to make it permanent. Quiet replaced it. Nora and I took the Williams machine back to storage and she labeled the shelf with neat black script. Operational, restored by A. Harper, June 2024. She wrote my name like the machine had met a person rather than a set of hands. When we left, she stopped by the workshop and looked at the doors. "May I?" she asked. I opened them. The summer light slanted inside and made every scratch look like a map. She walked between the cabinets, her fingers not touching anything, the way you walk in a church after hours. "It smells like a story kept telling the truth," she said. "Sometimes it lies," I said. "Sometimes it forgives the liar," she said. We didn't kiss there, we didn't make a movie of it. We went to the freezer and shared a bag of frozen cherries like children. Later, when we finally reached for each other, it felt like a well-oiled hinge opening exactly as intended. Not because anyone yanked on it, but because the metal had been cleaned and the pins aligned and someone had respected tolerances. I still have the listing agreement Lena tried to feed me. I didn't keep it as a trophy. I kept it because it reminds me that not all paperwork has to be a contract with someone else. Sometimes it's a witness to the thing you refuse to sell. I still keep receipts, invoices, time logs, a photo of the locksmith van. I still write the serial numbers in the grid notebook. On July 1st, I added Bally Wizard, restoration complete, exhibit at Turner Hall, 18 game plays before first bulb blew. Dad would laugh at that last line. He always said bulbs are honest liars. They promise forever and deliver a season, then give you the joy of fixing them. When I close the workshop for the night now, I flip off the lights and put my hand against the cool metal of the drill press. It's not a ritual exactly, it's a handshake. I hear my father's voice, "Check your bits, don't force the cut. Let the machine do the work it was built to do." I'm letting my heart do the same. She told me an empty workshop would make space for our future. What she emptied was her own. She said she'd forget me in a week, but I'm the one who forgot her.